It was nearly dark when the knock came. Rain slid in sheets down the windows, the wind pushing against the house like it wanted in. Martha stood at the sink, hands deep in dishwater, eyes staring at nothing. The knock came again, louder this time. Her breath caught before she even turned. Nobody came this far up the ridge unless they had trouble or didn't know what they were doing. She dried her hands quick and stepped to the door, pulling it open just enough to see. A man stood there, soaked through, wide shoulders hunched under a worn coat. He held something wrapped in a heavy blanket. No, someone. A baby. Small, maybe just weeks old, red-faced and wailing into the storm. He looked at her, his voice rough and tired. He ain't yours, but he needs you. Martha didn't move. Her stomach dropped like a stone. That voice, she knew that voice. She hadn't heard it in 8 years, but there it was, pulling up memories she tried to bury so deep she thought they'd rot. Eli, she whispered. He nodded, didn't smile, didn't explain, just stood there, rain pooling around his boots, baby crying in his arms. Martha opened the door wider, let him in. The baby was wet, cold, and hungry, and whatever reason Eli had for showing up now, she'd have to deal with later. She took the baby from him without another word, wrapped him in a dry towel, and brought him close to the fire. She didn't ask right away, just rocked the baby slow, letting the quiet stretch long between them. The storm howled outside. Inside, only the fire cracked and hissed. Eli stood in the doorway like he didn't belong in the warmth. He didn't take off his coat. His eyes didn't meet hers, just stayed fixed on the baby. "Whose is he?" she asked finally. "Not mine," Eli said. "Not yours. But you're all he's got now." That wasn't an answer, but it was the kind Eli gave when he didn't want to lie, but didn't want to tell the truth either. Martha nodded slowly, pressing her lips together. The baby smelled like wood smoke and milk and something else, fear maybe, her own fear leaking through her skin. She had built a quiet life out here, after the war, after Eli had disappeared with her brother and come back alone. She'd never asked too much about what happened. Didn't want to know. Men came back changed if they came back at all. Still, Eli's return wasn't just unexpected. It felt wrong, like something had torn loose in the world. She poured him coffee. He didn't touch it. "Why now?" she asked. Eli looked at her then. Really looked. His eyes were bloodshot, older than she remembered. "Because I'm leaving again," he said. "And I can't take him where I'm going." "You running?" she asked, soft. He didn't answer. The baby fussed and settled. Martha rocked him slower. Her hands were steady, but her heart wasn't. "You can't just show up with a child and hand him off like this." "What happened?" "I don't have time to explain everything," he said, voice low. "There's people looking, not just for me." She understood that kind of talk. Vague, dangerous. Eli had always walked the line between right and wrong. Even before the war, there were whispers about the things he did to get by. Backroom fights, moonshine runs, sometimes violence that came too easy. But he'd been her brother's best friend, and once, for a little while, he'd been hers too. "You do something to his mama?" she asked. That got a reaction. He winced, jaw tightening. "I tried to save her," he said. "Didn't make it in time. She'd die in childbirth." "No," he said. "She was murdered." The room went still. Only the baby moved, his breath soft against Martha's chest. Eli looked at the fire like he could see something inside it. Her name was Cora. She was 17. She'd been passed around like livestock, traded between men who thought nothing of her. She got pregnant by one of them, one who didn't want a bastard. When he found out, he came back with others. I got there too late, and the baby was in a basket under the porch, like it didn't matter. Martha stared at him, her chest tightening. "And what are you to him?" "I buried his mother," Eli said. "That makes me something." It wasn't enough. Not in the eyes of the law, maybe not even in the eyes of God. But Martha didn't argue, because something about the baby felt familiar, like he belonged here, even though nothing made sense. She put him down in the old cradle by the fire, the one she'd once kept ready, though it had never been used. The cradle she hadn't been able to give away, even when she'd told herself to move on. You shouldn't stay long, she said. I won't, Eli answered. But I need to tell you some things before I go. About the men, about what I've done, he said, and what might come next. Martha swallowed hard. The fire cracked louder, or maybe it was her heartbeat. He told her then, not everything, but enough. About the men running a smuggling ring out near Cobber Ridge. About how Cora had tried to escape and how Eli had helped. About the killings, the money, the things he saw, and the things he did to survive. Some of it made Martha flinch. Some of it made her wonder how he'd lived with himself all these years. When he finished, they sat in silence. The rain had slowed, the wind curling softer against the house. You gonna turn yourself in? She asked. No, I'm gonna find the ones who did it. That won't end well. I know. Martha looked at him, really looked. She saw what the years had done. The hollow in his cheeks. The scars he didn't have before. The way he couldn't quite meet her eyes. Then why come to me? He finally lifted his gaze. Because you're the only one who ever made me think I could be something better. She wanted to say that was a long time ago. That whatever they'd been had died with her brother. But the baby stirred then, whimpering, and it caught in her chest. Eli stood. His name is Samuel. Cora's mother used to sing it in church. I figured it's the only good thing I could give him. Martha nodded. I'll take care of him. I know. He stepped toward the door, then paused. If anyone comes asking, you never saw me. She didn't answer, just watched him walk out into the night. The rain had stopped, but the mud pulled at his boots like it didn't want to let him go. She stayed at the window long after he was gone, holding the baby again, listening to the silence settle back in. But she knew silence didn't mean peace. It just meant the storm had moved for now. 3 days passed before anyone came up the ridge. Martha was feeding Samuel mashed oats when the sound of hooves carried through the trees. She stiffened, the spoon hovering midair. It wasn't Eli. He rode light and fast. This was slower, heavier, like someone used to being noticed. The horse stopped out front. Martha rose, handed Samuel a rattle, and walked to the door. She didn't open it all the way. The man on the porch was tall, lean, and wore a preacher's collar under his coat. He had a silver cross pinned to his lapel and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Ma'am, he said smoothly, I'm looking for a man named Eli Rourke. Rode through these parts not long ago. You seen him? Martha blinked slow. Haven't heard that name in years. The man tilted his head, studying her. That's so? Pity. He's been keeping questionable company. Got himself mixed up in some trouble. I was hoping to speak with him before worse came of it. You a lawman? He smiled again. Something like that. Reverend Silas Harrow. I preach in Santa Vita, and I do my best to guide those straying from the path. Martha's stomach twisted. There was something too clean about him. The way he spoke, the shine on his boots, the way he kept glancing past her shoulder like he knew something waited inside. I'll let you know if I see him, she said, stepping back to close the door. Much obliged, he said, tipping his hat. You've got a lovely place up here. Quiet. Out of the way. Easy to forget the rest of the world, I imagine. She shut the door gently. Locked it. Reverend Harrow didn't ride off right away. She stood behind the curtain and watched him sit still in his saddle, eyes fixed on the house like he could see through the walls. Finally, he turned and disappeared down the trail. Martha exhaled slow. That man wasn't a preacher. Or if he was, he served a God she didn't pray to. She wasn't alone anymore. And not just because of Samuel. That evening, she pulled an old rifle from the back of the closet, oiled it, loaded it, set it by the door. The next morning, trouble found her again. This time, it wasn't a stranger. It was Nora Cobb. Martha saw her coming from a distance, striding up the hill with mud on her hem and fire in her eyes. She wore a green shawl pinned crooked at the shoulder and carried a satchel heavy with whatever secrets she never seemed to leave behind. Nora had been her closest friend once. They'd grown up on either side of Dry Valley Creek, sharing secrets, moonshine, and heartbreak in equal measure. But they hadn't spoken in almost a year. Not since the fight. Not since the letters. Martha opened the door before Nora could knock. You still good at keeping things warm? Nora asked, stepping in like she owned the place. Martha didn't answer, just shut the door and waited. Nora's eyes flicked toward the cradle, and her whole face changed. She walked over slow, reached out, then hesitated. He's not yours. No, Nora turned. You got him from Eli. It wasn't a question. Martha didn't flinch. He left him here. Said he had no one else. Nora crossed her arms, leaning against the mantel. He's put a target on you. I figured. You don't even know the truth, do you? You do. Nora looked down, suddenly quiet. More than I should. Not enough to stop it. Martha watched her carefully. You always said you hated him. I did. Maybe still do. Doesn't mean I want to see him dead. She looked up, which is exactly what'll happen if Silas Harrow finds him. So you've met him? Nora nodded. Everyone has lately. He's been riding through towns, preaching fire and poison. Says he's hunting men of sin. But what he's really doing is cleaning up, killing anyone who knows too much about what goes on out near Cobber Ridge. You're saying Eli's one of them? I'm saying he was useful. Until he wasn't. Martha's jaw tightened. She looked down at Samuel, sleeping sound in the cradle, thumb pressed to his cheek. I don't want lies, she said. If you came here to twist things, you can go. I came to warn you, Nora said, because I know what it's like to be caught in someone else's storm. And because you're the only person who might make Eli stop running. Martha didn't answer. Too many thoughts swirled in her head. About Samuel's mother, about Harrow, about the way Eli had looked at her that night. Like he was already saying goodbye. Nora turned to leave, but paused at the door. You're not the only one keeping something hidden. What's that supposed to mean? Nora looked back, her eyes softer. You think no one noticed you vanished for months after James died? That you came back with bruises that didn't come from grief? You've been hiding too, Martha. Only difference is now your past has a heartbeat and a name. She left without waiting for an answer. That night, Martha barely slept. Every creak of the cabin made her reach for the rifle. Every rustle outside sounded like danger coming through the trees. By morning, she made up her mind. She took Samuel, wrapped him close against her chest, and headed down the ridge. If she stayed, they'd find her. If she left, she might find Eli first and get the truth from his own mouth before the lies buried it. The trail was muddy, the wagon ruts deep. By mid-morning, her boots were soaked, her breath showing white in the cold air. She didn't stop until she reached the old boarding house on the edge of Mora Flats. It was run by Sheriff Jules Acker and his wife. Both were hard to read. Both owed her more than they'd admit. Martha knocked and waited. Jules opened the door with a squint. Well, I'll be damned. You still walk like you're hiding a gun. Maybe I am. He looked down at the baby, whistled low. Yours? No, but I need a place for him. Just for a day. You in trouble? Not yet. Trying to get ahead of it. He opened the door wider. Come in. You can't fight the past on an empty stomach. She left Samuel with Jules's wife, gave the baby one last kiss, and stepped out again. Her next stop was a bar called the Cattle's Eye. It looked half abandoned, but someone always knew something there. That someone was Levi Boone. Levi was a dealer in information, whiskey, and whatever else could be bought. He leaned behind the bar, polishing glasses he didn't need to polish, his suspenders too tight and his teeth too white. Martha Lane, he said, smiling wide. I heard you were dead. Just quiet. You looking for someone? Eli Rourke. Levi's face didn't change, but his voice dropped a notch. Why? Because men like Harrow are asking questions, and I want the truth before it's twisted past fixing. Levi nodded slowly. You ever think the truth's the thing that breaks it all to pieces? She held his gaze. I don't scare easy. Maybe you should. He leaned in. Eli's hiding near the river fork by Dead Man's Hollow. But he ain't alone. He's with a girl, young, but not a child. Folks say she's mute. Folks say she's not his blood, but he's keeping her close. Martha's throat dried. Who is she? No one knows. Some say she's Cora's sister. Others say she saw the killing. Either way, she's the last piece Eli's trying to protect. Or use. Levi didn't argue. Martha turned to go. Levi called out. You still wearing that ring under your coat? She froze. You think we don't notice? He he said softly. That you wear it like it means nothing. But you were married once. Just like he was once yours. It's never that simple. She didn't respond. Outside, the sky had begun to darken again. Another storm coming. She pulled her coat tighter and started toward the river. As Martha moved through the trees, rifle strapped across her back, her mind ran through every word, every warning. Nora, Jules, Levi, all telling her different versions of truth she hadn't asked for. But none of them had told her what she needed most. Why Eli had come back to her. Not just to drop off a baby. Not just to run from guilt. There was something deeper. Something that tied her to all of it. And as the wind picked up and the first drops of rain began to fall again, she knew one thing with brutal clarity. Not everyone wanted justice. Some wanted revenge. Some wanted silence. And some, like Eli, maybe just wanted peace, but didn't know how to find it without leaving ruin behind. Martha pressed forward, toward answers, toward him. Rain had started falling again by the time Martha reached the river fork near Dead Man's Hollow. The air was sharp and cold, the trees trembling in the wind, and every step deeper into the woods felt like peeling back a layer of the past she had never wanted to face. The ground was soft and slick, thick with moss and mud, as if the earth itself was trying to bury memories too painful to name. Memories full of bones no one talked about. She heard the creak first, then the faint rustle of movement, low voices, the crackle of the fire. Eli was there. Martha kept low, eyes sweeping between the trees until she saw the edge of a lean-to shelter barely visible through the brush. Eli sat with his back to her, legs stretched toward the fire, a rifle beside him. Opposite him sat a young girl, no older than 15, her dark hair pulled into a rough braid, her hands wrapped around a tin cup. There was a hollowness in her expression, something unnervingly still. Martha stepped into view. Eli stood quickly, hand on his rifle, but froze when he saw her. He said her name. She nodded and told him they needed to talk. He glanced at the girl, motioned for her to stay, and stepped aside with Martha. He noted she came fast, and she replied that she had to. Harrow was looking. Eli said he knew and that Harrow was closer than she thought. When Martha asked about the girl, Eli told her name was Lena, Cora's half-sister, and that she had witnessed the killing. Harrow had let her live, planning to find her later, but she ran, and Eli had found her. Martha said he kept saving girls from men like Harrow, but Eli bitterly replied that he always got to them after the damage was done. When Martha asked why he hadn't told her about Lena or the rest, Eli questioned whether she would have helped him if he had. She admitted she didn't know. He told her the truth only made things worse. Then she asked directly if it was him, if he had killed Cora's killer. Eli denied it, but admitted he had watched him die. She asked by whose hand. His silence gave the answer. Rain ticked against the leaves like a clock. Martha accused him of lying, but he insisted he hadn't. He had just left things out to protect her. She told him he no longer had the right to decide that. Eli looked away, murmuring that he never stopped trying. They fell silent until Lena walked over and handed Eli a folded paper. He explained she had drawn it, not with words, but with memory. She forgot nothing. The paper was rough, stick figures showing a cabin, men with hats and guns, wide eyes filled with fear, blood, a woman on the ground, and a cross around a man's neck. Martha realized Lena had seen Harrow. Eli added that she had seen him smile afterward. The fire cracked behind them. Lena turned her face, revealing a scar down her jaw, old and pale. Someone had tried to silence her permanently. Martha asked why they kept running instead of go to the law. Eli replied bitterly that the law wouldn't care about a mute girl, especially when Harrow had money, reach, and a name wrapped in scripture. They'd believe him before they believed either of them. When Martha asked in me, Eli told her she was already in it. She knew he was right. The moment she held Samuel in her arms, she had tied herself to this. Then a gunshot rang out, shattering the stillness. A bird exploded from a branch above. Eli shouted for cover, dragging Lena behind a tree. Martha dove to the ground. Another shot cracked. Eli confirmed they'd been followed. Martha loaded her rifle, asked how many, but Eli didn't know. She peeked and saw a man in a duster coat moving through the trees. Not Harrow, but one of his hired men. Eli fired and dropped him. They weren't there to scare anyone. More shots rang out. Screams. Hoofbeats thundered in. From the north, Harrow arrived on horseback, calm and untouched. He demanded the girl. Eli muttered, "Not like this." Martha crawled to him and asked for the plan. Eli wanted to split up and lead them away. She refused, saying that's exactly what Harrow wanted. Eli asked, "Then what?" Martha looked at Lena and said, "We turned the lie into truth." By dusk, 3 men were dead. One had fled. Harrow was gone, but wounded. Blood trailed toward the ridge. He'd been hit. Not enough to kill, but enough to slow him. Eli stood over one of the bodies, hands shaking, regretting not leaving sooner. Martha told him he would have been caught on the road. Harrow was already watching her place. Lena sat wrapped in a blanket, quiet, eyes fixed on where Harrow had gone. When Martha asked if he'd return, Eli paused, then said Harrow was the kind of man who couldn't stand to lose. Martha replied, "Then we make sure he knows he already did." That night, they lit a fire large enough to be seen for miles. Smoke coiled upward like a beacon. It was a risk, but they were done hiding. If trouble came, let it come while they were ready. In a flicker of firelight, truths began to unravel. Eli, voice rough, admitted that after the war he had blood on his hands, not just enemy blood. He had done things for money and survival. He worked for men like Harrow. Stayed too long. When he tried to leave, he knew too much. Cora had been promised to one of Harrow's friends. She begged Eli for help. He tried, but they were caught. She was killed in front of him. He was left for dead. Martha asked why he'd come to her. Eli explained that after her brother died, he followed her. He saw what had happened to her, the man she married, the bruises. He wanted to come then, but didn't know how. He felt responsible and didn't think he deserved to fix what he had helped break. Martha, hollowed, stared at the fire. She reminded him he hadn't come then, but he had now. He nodded. Maybe that counts for something. They sat in silence. The wind shifted. The rain had stopped. Lena stood and knelt beside Martha, pressing something in her hand, another drawing. This one was of a grave, freshly dug. The name on the stone, Samuel's mother. Martha's throat tightened. She asked if Lena knew. Eli said she knew everything. Lena looked at him and slowly opened her mouth. A broken whisper came out. "He's your son." The fire cracked. Martha turned, stunned. Eli didn't move. Lena nodded. Cora said so. Before they came, Eli broke. "I didn't know." Lena said no one did. Cora wanted it that way to keep Samuel safe. Martha stood, trembling. "You brought me your son without knowing he was yours." Eli nodded slowly, as if realizing it fully for the first time. "I just knew I had to keep him alive." Martha turned away. Everything had changed. Samuel wasn't just a boy caught in a war. He was Eli's blood. Maybe Cora's last hope was trusting Martha to protect him. Now, there was more than survival at stake. There was a future, one that needed guarding. And Harrow, wherever he was, would never stop. Not until silence was paid for in blood. The storm had passed, but the war had just begun. The cabin burned before dawn. It started with the smell, smoke crawling under the door, curling through the cracks in the walls like fingers. Martha sat up fast, heart pounding, her first thought not of herself, but of Samuel, asleep against her chest in a cradle she'd made from an old crate. She yanked the child into her arms just as Eli burst into the room, face blackened, coughing hard. He rasped that they had set it and they had to run. Now, flames licked along the far wall, catching fast in the dry beams. Martha grabbed her bag and Lena's hand. The girl was already awake, eyes wide with panic, but not frozen. She moved quickly, helping grab what little they had left. Outside, the cold air slapped them hard, smoke rolling behind them as they fled toward the tree line. The fire was already too big to stop. The cabin, their last piece of safety, was gone. They didn't speak until they reached the bluff above the hollow. From there, they could see everything, the fire glowing like a wound and men on horseback circling below. Harrow had found them again. Martha whispered, hoarse, that he wasn't stopping and that this would end when one of them was dead. Eli didn't answer. He looked hollowed out, burned up from the inside. His eyes didn't leave the fire. That was the beginning of the unraveling. The next 2 days passed in a haze of fear and suspicion. Every sound in the woods felt like footsteps, every shadow a rifle barrel. They moved constantly, sleeping in short bursts, keeping Samuel wrapped tight and close. But with the pressure, the cracks began to show. Lena grew distant. She kept her drawings to herself now, scribbling in the dirt or on scraps of wood, always hiding them after. When Martha gently pressed her, the girl only shook her head. Eli said she was scared. Martha snapped that she was too, but the girl knew something. She could feel it. Eli said they all knew something they weren't saying, and he was right. The next night, as they made camp near an old collapsed mining shaft, Martha couldn't sleep. She stared into the fire, her mind chasing questions faster than she could stop them. About Cora, about Eli, about Samuel. She stood and walked into the trees, needing air or distance. That's when she heard voices, low, urgent. She followed them silently until she saw the figures. Eli and Lena, talking in hushed tones, too close, too familiar. Martha stepped out and demanded to know what the hell it was. Eli turned, startled. Lena froze. Martha accused him of keeping secrets again. He tried to explain it wasn't what she thought, but she cut him off. The girl had known about Samuel, about Cora. What else was she hiding? Lena looked down, fingers digging into her sleeves. Eli revealed that Lena had been there the night Cora died. Not just after, but before. Martha's blood went cold. Lena had seen it happen. Eli explained she was with Cora when Harrow came, but she wasn't just hiding. She was part of it. Lena didn't flinch. Eli said she led Harrow there because he told her she'd be safe, that he'd take care of her. She believed him because he had raised her, taken her in after her mother died. She had been like a daughter to him. Martha looked at Lena, really looked. Her face wasn't broken or weeping. It was cold. Martha whispered that she had betrayed Cora. Lena nodded once, saying she thought he loved them. Martha asked why help now. Lena said she hadn't known he would kill Cora, not until he smiled afterward. Then she knew what kind of man he was. And she ran to Eli. Eli stepped between them, saying she was a child, scared, lied to like they all were. Martha said no. He still was. She walked back to the fire. Every step felt like falling. That night, she didn't sleep. She sat awake with Samuel in her arms, rocking him gently as her mind cracked open. She had trusted Eli, opened her heart again in small, aching pieces. And now, he was still keeping her in the dark. When morning came, she made a decision. She told him they were splitting up. He'd go one way. She'd take Samuel and the girl the other. Eli said she didn't mean it. She insisted she did. He said she couldn't do it alone. She told him she already had once. He stepped forward, but she backed away, reminding him he said he was done making choices for her. Now he could prove it. For a moment, he just stood there. Then he nodded. He'd draw them off and buy her time. Martha didn't thank him. She just turned and walked. But Lena didn't follow. She stood with Eli. She said she was staying. Martha stared. After everything, Lena said she had to fix it. She had to be the one who ended it. And Martha saw it then, the cold resolve in the girl's face, the rage that had been simmering since the beginning. Lena hadn't been afraid. She'd been planning. Martha that knelt beside her told her she didn't have to carry it. Lena said she already did. Martha hugged her once and told her not to be brave, just survive. Then she took Samuel and walked into the trees, her heart breaking in ways she couldn't even name. She made it 5 miles before the storm broke. Rain tearing from the sky, the kind that erased footprints and turned rivers wild. She found a cave and huddled inside, holding Samuel tight. But her thoughts were with the girl, and Eli, and the fight they were about to face. The battle happened fast. Eli rode into Harrow's camp like a ghost, fire in his eyes, gun in hand. He wasn't there to talk. Lena came from the other side, quiet as smoke. She slit the throat of the first man she passed. No hesitation. They took down 3 before anyone fired back. Harrow emerged from his tent, gun already raised. He aimed at Eli, but Lena stepped in front. The bullet hit her in the shoulder. She fell hard, crying out. Eli screamed and fired twice. 1 bullet missed. The second caught Harrow in the chest. It wasn't enough. Harrow staggered forward, blood pouring, hate in his eyes. He snarled that Eli was always soft. Eli answered that he had just learned when to stop. He shot again. This time, Harrow didn't get up. Lena bled fast, her body going cold. Eli pressed a hand to her wound, begging her to stay. She smiled once and whispered, "I fixed it." Then her eyes closed. Martha found them 3 hours later. Eli sat by the fire, soaked and silent, blood on his shirt. Lena was wrapped in a blanket, her face peaceful. He said she saved him, voice breaking. Martha laid a hand on his shoulder and said no, she saved all of them. They buried her on the ridge beside Cora. No words, just silence and wind. The fight was over, but the damage would stay. Back in town, Harrow's death made waves. Men who once stood behind him vanished. Others turned on each other. The law poked its head in, too late to matter. Eli stayed on the outskirts, never close enough to draw attention. He built a new cabin, smaller, quiet. Martha came sometimes with Samuel. They didn't speak of love or forgiveness, but they shared coffee. Quiet, a place to be human. Moral lines had been crossed. Blood had been spilled, but something better had grown in the wreckage. One morning, Samuel ran through the grass, chasing shadows. Eli watched him with tired eyes and said he doesn't know yet. Martha answered he doesn't need to. Not now. Eli said he will. Martha nodded, and when he does, they'd tell him the truth. Even if it hurt, even if it broke them all over again. Because this time, they wouldn't lie. Not anymore. The wind howled across the flatland like a warning. The sky was low, heavy with clouds the color of old bruises. Martha knew storms were coming again, but this time, they weren't the kind you could ride out in a cave or hide from in the trees. This was the kind that split lies clean in half. She'd been through too much not to feel it in her bones. It began with a letter. The postmaster in Sweet Hollow wasn't supposed to keep things for long, but he'd held on to it because the name scrawled on the envelope was unfamiliar, Elijah Rames, and no one had claimed it. Martha was in town for supplies when he offered it to her, muttering, "Man said he might stop by." Never did. She took it because of the name. Rames, Eli's real name. A part of him she'd never heard from his lips, not even when they'd buried Lena or watched Samuel take his first steps. She opened it in the back alley, hands trembling. The letter inside was short, a woman's handwriting, words packed with urgency and guilt. Eli, I can't carry this anymore. He's not just Harrow's. He's yours. I lied to protect him. I'm sorry. Cora. Martha felt the ground slip. The baby, Samuel, Eli's son, not Harrow's. Not entirely. The world twisted around her, and she couldn't breathe. Not because the truth was ugly, but because he hadn't told her. Even now, after all they'd been through, he'd let her believe she was raising the child of a monster, when the truth was Eli had known. Maybe not from the start, but he knew. She didn't go back to the cabin. Not right away. Instead, she went to Cora's grave, the dirt still soft over Lena's beside her. She stood between them, the wind clawing at her hair, and said nothing. Just let the storm settle into her. When she finally returned, Eli was out chopping wood, sweat on his brow, shirt damp. He looked up, saw her face, and knew. "You found the letter," he said. She nodded. He dropped the axe. "I didn't know until after," he said. "After you'd taken him. After we'd buried Cora. I found her journal. I read the words 100 times. I didn't tell you because I didn't know how. That baby called me Mama, Martha said. Her voice cracked. I gave him my breath when he couldn't breathe. I ran through fire for him. And all this time, you stood next to me like a stranger. I thought I was protecting you. Don't say that. Don't give me that coward's excuse. Eli flinched. I was scared you'd leave, that you'd hand him back. I never wanted to know who he came from, she said. But I deserve the truth. I know. They stood in silence. The sky rumbled above them, thunder rolling like judgment. You don't trust me, she said finally. I do, he said. I didn't want to lose what we'd built. You lost it anyway. That night, she packed. No dramatic speeches. No drawn-out tears. She put Samuel on her hip, took only what she needed, and walked into the dark. Eli didn't follow. She stayed with Mrs. Glass in Sweet Hollow, an old widow with too many cats and a kind smile that didn't press for details. Samuel was too young to ask why they were suddenly in a new bed, with new sounds outside the window. He just curled against her and slept, small fingers gripping hers like an anchor. But Martha didn't sleep. The next days passed in a blur. She worked at the general store to pay her way, kept her eyes down, and avoided the rumors. Until she heard Harrow had a brother. Josiah Harrow, the quiet one, the thinker, not a brute like his sibling, but worse in ways that counted, calculating, careful. And now, he was asking questions. About Eli, about the baby, about Martha. He rode into Sweet Hollow 3 days later, tipping his hat, polite as polished silver. He bought coffee, sat in the back of the store, and smiled too easily. That night, Martha found a note pinned to the door. Bring the child, or bury him. She didn't scream, didn't cry. She walked to the sheriff's office. But he was drunk. Again, too old and too tired to stand against someone like Josiah Harrow. She was alone, except for Eli. She found him where she always did, working his hands into the dirt, trying to build something solid out of the wreckage. He looked like he hadn't eaten in days. I need your help, she said. He looked up, eyes red. Anything. There's another Harrow. He stood without a word. They didn't plan like professionals. They planned like survivors, people who knew pain and could spot it coming. They knew Josiah wouldn't wait long. They knew he'd want to draw blood, not make noise. So they lured him. They used Samuel. Martha waited near the churchyard with the child in her arms, every breath a war. Eli stayed hidden on the ridge, rifle loaded. If Josiah came alone, they'd end it quick. If not, well, then it'd be a fight. But Josiah didn't bring men. He came alone, wearing a clean coat, holding nothing but a cane. You really think I'd hurt a child? He asked, stepping toward her. You sent the note. I sent a warning, Josiah said. I'm not my brother. I don't kill for pride. I do it for reason. Martha narrowed her eyes. What reason do you have to hurt a baby? Josiah smiled. Legacy. He reached into his coat, slowly, and pulled out a paper. A deed. To this land, he said. To Harrow's holdings. All of it. Signed over to the boy. Why? Because the boy is blood, Josiah said. And I don't trust the rest of you not to squander it. Eli stepped from the shadows, gun raised. So you just walk away? I'm not staying, Josiah said. But I'll be watching. Eli stepped closer. If you ever come near him again, you'll kill me. Josiah laughed. Maybe, but you'll never kill what you are. A hero, just like him. He walked away. And that was almost worse than violence. Because the truth stayed behind. Samuel was a hero, a child born of chaos and cruelty. And one day, he'd ask what that meant. That night, Martha sat with Eli by the fire. Neither of them spoke for a long time. Then she said, I want you to leave. Eli turned to her slowly. What? I can't do this with you here, she said. Not until I figure out what's mine and what's left over. I want to be his father. You are. But you need to fix yourself before you try to fix him. He nodded. Once. Silent. In the morning, he was gone. Months passed. Sweet Hollow settled into the rhythm of spring. The trees bloomed. Children laughed in the square. But Martha stayed cautious, her love bruised, too deep to forget. She kept Samuel close, taught him to run, to hide, to read people the way she did now. Then one morning, she opened her door, and Eli was there. Thinner, paler, but different, clear. He didn't speak at first, just handed her a small notebook. His story, everything, from his first theft at 13 to the day he killed his father. The truth behind his running, his lies, his silence. All of it. She read every word. Then she let him hold Samuel. They didn't speak of futures. Not yet. But she let him stay for supper. And for now, that was enough. Because all the lies were gone. And all that remained was what they chose to build from the ashes. The land was quiet now, but not peaceful. Not really. The echoes of what had come before settled like dust on the cracked earth. Impossible to ignore, impossible to erase. Martha stood on the ridge overlooking Sweet Hollow, Samuel running ahead in the tall grass, his laughter light against the heavy sky. She traced the horizon with tired eyes, feeling the weight of everything, the betrayals, the losses, the fragile hope that had somehow grown out of the wreckage. Eli was gone for good this time. He had left not just the town, but the man he once was behind. The notebook he'd given her was dog-eared and stained, a map of his failures and attempts at making right. He'd wandered west, chasing shadows of himself, trying to find a place where the past didn't bite so hard. Whether he'd find it or not was a question Martha didn't ask anymore. Some ghosts weren't meant to be chased away. Josiah Harrow's name had faded from the tongues of the townsfolk. He vanished like the rest of his family, swallowed by the kind of silence only men with blood on their hands know how to find. No one mourned him. No one spoke of his legacy anymore. The land he claimed for Samuel was quiet too, left untouched, as if it too refused to carry the weight of the Harrow name. But the price of survival was carved deep into those who stayed. Martha looked at Samuel and saw both their futures and their pasts tangled in his small face. The boy who didn't yet understand what bloodline meant, who didn't yet carry the knowledge of the men who fought and died so he could live. She saw in him the chance to rewrite the stories they'd been told, a chance to choose better, even when the world wanted them to fall into the same darkness. She thought of Lena, buried beneath the ridge beside Cora, brave and broken, her secrets never fully spoken but never forgotten. Her sacrifice a quiet echo that still held power, a reminder that redemption could be messy and incomplete. Martha's choices had cost her. She had loved and lost, lied and forgiven. And in the end, she stood on this ridge, not as a victor or a victim, but simply as someone who'd survived. The irony was sharpest when she realized it wasn't the men with guns or grudges who shaped her fate. It was the fragile human connections, the choices made in silence, the small acts of kindness or cruelty that rippled out further than any bullet. Samuel ran back to her, breathless and smiling, a child untouched by the past's weight. She pulled him close and whispered, "We're free now." But freedom, she knew, wasn't a place. It was a choice, a daily reckoning with the shadows, a quiet promise to keep walking forward even when the night was darkest. And in that choice, maybe, just maybe, there was a kind of peace,